What if there was a simple model to identify your purpose in life, to give you a why to what you should do? Well, there is, and it's called Ikigai, or is it? Hey people, welcome back to my channel. I'm Roy, a coach, facilitator and speaker, helping people, communities and companies create internal change for external impact. So, Ikigai. Well, if you're into the world of personal development or you just like pastel shaded Venn diagrams, then you might have come across this term before. And specifically, when I say the word Ikigai, you may think of this particular image. So, this image with 4 intersecting circles, one with what you're good at, one with what you enjoy or love, one with what the world needs, and one with what you can be paid for. So let's get into the American, Spanish, and Channel Island origin of Ikigai. Wait, what? Ikigai is a Japanese word, right? Well, yes it is. But this particular Venn diagram has a rather interesting history. Let's go back to 2011 and begin in the city of Denver, Colorado in the United States, where a teacher called Dorothy Shapland creates this image, which itself is an iteration of lots of other personal development frameworks. As you can see, it's got the 4 interconnecting circles with the same terms. What it has in the middle, though, is bliss. And then later that same year, a Spanish astrologer called Andrew Zuzunaga created this image. In the center is a little red star, which links to the word propósito, which is the Spanish word for purpose in English. So he creates his image and starts sharing it on Facebook in around 2012. It gets picked up by another Spanish author and gets published in a book. And then we jump forward a couple of years and hop over to the Channel Islands, where an entrepreneur and coach called Mark Wynn has been watching a 2009 TED Talk by Dan Buettner about so-called blue zones, the areas of the world where people seem to live long and healthy lives. One of those places, one of these so-called blue zones, was the island of Okinawa in Japan. And Dan Buettner describes this concept of Ikigai, and he translates that roughly as the reason to get up in the morning, and talks about how it might be one of the reasons why people who live there live such long and healthy lives. Now, Mark Wynn has also recently come across that Spanish purpose Venn diagram. And instead of the word purpose, he's inspired by this word Ikigai, and decides to write a blog post and stick the word Ikigai in the middle of that purpose Venn diagram. And ta-da! We get the Ikigai Venn diagram. And the rest is viral meme history. Okay. So let's pause this story and go back to the original word, Ikigai. So the term Ikigai is a compound of 2 different Japanese words, Iki, meaning life, and Gai, meaning effect or worth. Ikigai, therefore, is roughly translated as a reason to live, or something that makes life worth living. Ken Mogi, a Japanese neuroscientist who wrote the little book of Ikigai, describes it like this. There are many ways to define Ikigai. One way to put it is to say that Ikigai is the reason you get up in the morning. It could be something very small like having a cup of coffee and a chocolate and something that makes your day go on. That is Ikigai. On the other hand, Ikigai can be life-defining. A very big goal like going to Mars or winning the Nobel Prize or becoming the Prime Minister of a country. So Ikigai can be something small or something big. In a nutshell, Ikigai is a spectrum, and the complexity of Ikigai actually reflects the complexity of life itself. So a spectrum from the very small to the very large, but all focused on how do we create a life worth living. What's interesting when I've been looking into this word and where it comes from, and then the Venn diagram, is some of the reactions when Japanese people get to see that Venn diagram and get to hear about the European or Western interpretation of what Ikigai is. For example, a journalist from The Economist in 2022 was speaking to a Japanese professor of psychology about Ikigai. They said that native speakers seldom use the term. If they do, it's in the context of small joys, such as spending time with family or enjoying hobbies. For example, this psychologist said that if I decide to sneak out of a lecture to have a beer, that counts as my Ikigai. So, quite different from the original Venn diagram that we looked at. So there's a couple of things that have come up for me looking into all of this. Firstly, some cultural awkwardness. So online culture has given us the ability to exchange ideas, thoughts, cultural artifacts at lightning speed across the world, which I think has the potential to be amazing for humanity, to enrich us, to share things in ways that have not been shared before. And yet, In this example, it feels a bit more like cultural appropriation, however unintentional that may have been. What comes to my mind when I say this is that I grew up watching a lot of 80s American films. And if you wanted to make one of those movies a little bit more mysterious, a little quasi-mystical, then a nice shortcut in your storyline was to throw in an Asian person, preferably slightly elderly. See this, and this, and this, and this. And in that same vein, foreign words, non-English words in this case, especially when they come from Asia, can do a lot of that same work. They can seem mysterious and mystical, and also give us the opportunity to layer on our own meanings, slightly regardless of what the original meaning was. The creation of the Ikigai Venn diagram, this one, to me is the story of taking a concept from Japan, which seems like quite a day-to-day process of thinking about small actions in your everyday. Maybe that's making a cup of tea, or gardening, or having great conversations with friends, and then layering on some European ideas of what purpose and meaning are, and then merging that idea with a Eurocentric idea of what personal development is and should be, and also with capitalism. Let's not forget that one of those circles there is all about what you can be paid for. My other critique of the Ikigai Venn diagram is about that central bit where all those four circles intersect. This came up for me because I started using the Ikigai Venn diagram a few years ago with young adults that I was doing career coaching with. And let me say right off the bat, I loved it, they loved it, and I think this is a super useful conversation starter, especially when you're talking and thinking about things like entrepreneurship. However, the one thing that I and some of the people I was working with found troubling or challenging about the Ikigai Venn diagram was the explicit suggestion that there was one thing at the center of those circles that should fulfill everything within there. And that one thing should be your career, should be something that you're paid for, and that should be your purpose. And like I say, if we went back to the original meaning of the word Ikigai, to what makes a life worth living, then for example, for a lot of people, for a significant chunk of time, being a parent might be their Ikigai, but it wouldn't make it onto the diagram because you don't get paid for being a parent. So where does that leave me and Ikigai? Well, as I said, I think the Ikigai Venn diagram is a super cool way to start conversations when you're doing career coaching kind of work, specifically around things like entrepreneurship. And what I perhaps most like about the Ikigai Venn diagram is that it puts what the world needs on an equal footing with financial or personal development goals. And for someone like me who's working with people and with companies to create internal change for external impact, I think having that larger than self concept is really important. So the Ikigai Venn diagram, what do I think? On the one hand, I think still a useful tool for reflecting, for thinking about issues larger than yourself and how you can make a contribution to that. On the other hand, I think it will always be associated with a Japanese concept that maybe it doesn't have too much to do with. But if it gets people to think about and reflect on what makes a life worth living, then to me, that's no bad thing. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below about all things Ikigai. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.